Don't make you laugh too much.
Okay. I'll probably make you laugh.
Right now.
Sorry.
Well, right now.
Okay.
Welcome to Bellingham Voices. I'm Marie Marchand, your host. On today's show, I'm happy to welcome Brad Lockhart. Now, you may not be familiar with his name yet, but I'm sure that you're familiar with one of his works of art that's been around town everywhere, and we're going to talk about that first thing. Welcome to the show, Brad.
Thanks for having me, Marie.
So to me, you seem like a celebrity in Bellingham. Celebrity, great. And I'm not sure if that happened overnight or not. We'll kind of talk about that as we go along. But one thing is that you are the designer of the new Bellingham flag.
Yes.
So congratulations.
Thank you.
And that's been around, I don't know how long, and you'll talk about that, but people have adored it since it first came out, really embraced it. And then the city council kind of jumped on that, and it became the official flag on April 24th when they voted for it.
Yep.
So that was very exciting. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to read a quote that Michael Lillquist said about that, about the flag and about that vote. He said, "For me, the best part of this story is that the design was already Bellingham's unofficial flag, and the city council is simply joining the movement. People have told me they love the colors and the symbolism, and it looks great on a sticker on the back of my car." Perfect. Is what he said. So tell us about your journey with the flag from its inception to now.
Well, it's definitely been a journey. It's been, I think, roughly 2 years in the making. So about 2 years ago, I was first invited to join an unofficial contest to design a flag for Bellingham. And that contest was hosted by the Downtown Bellingham Partnership. I think they were partly inspired by a recent TED Talk by the Radiotopia host Roman Mars. He kind of laid out what makes a good city flag and a bad city flag, and he was talking about how we can fix city flags that already exist or create new ones. And so that inspired the partnership to be like, well, I think Bellingham is ready for something like that. So I entered the contest and eventually won the contest. And the flag was first initially raised. We made one unofficial flag March 26th, I believe it was, of 2015. Raised that first flag. No, sorry, 2016. And ever since then, it's just been kind of this grassroots promotional idea of like a new civic symbol for Bellingham, a new visual identity. And it's had some peaks and valleys, it's had some challenges, but it's been very rewarding in the end to see, like you said, people just adopt it naturally. I think that was a really big part of its success, was the fact that the city council was able to recognize something that was already happening and not have to initiate something new. People get very defensive about things that have the name of their city on it. Like if you said, this is your new Bellingham flag, it's a very personal thing to people. So I felt like having it occur naturally, didn't seem so dictator-like of the city being like, this is your flag. It's like, people said, this is our flag, and the city just said, sure. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Talk about the symbolism of the flag.
The symbolism is a mixture of Bellingham's unique geography and our history. So it has four main components. I think there's one flying behind me. Mm-hmm. I've also got this little goofy gold one that I made. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so the four parts are, the first piece is the large blue field, which represents Bellingham Bay. Obviously, Bellingham Bay is very historic to this place. It's where we get the name Bellingham from. When George Vancouver came in 1792 and named the bay after his accountant back in England, who wasn't even there. And it's a unique feature of our city. It's where we got a lot of our commerce from the late 1800s. And so that's the large field. Then we have the two four-sided white stars, which represent the two local coastal Salish people. So just to the west, we have the Lummi Nation, and just to the east, we have the Nooksack tribe. Those are obviously our, historic indigenous people. Some people estimate the Coast Salish people have been around for 3,000 years. I don't think the numbers are, exactly right, but of course it made sense to honor them and to recognize them as a symbol for their past and for their future. Mm-hmm. The three wavy lines are a symbol of the word Whatcom. So obviously we hear Whatcom every day, and not everybody knows what it means, but it means noisy waters. And the direct translation is the sound of water dripping fast and hard, which is a description of the mouth of Whatcom Creek. So it's where Whatcom Creek meets Bellingham Bay, which is obviously a pretty historic place. It's where we have our museum, and it's where the earliest settlements of European people were, and where camps before that of Salish people were. And it describes the sound that the water makes there, but it also describes the physical location of that place. And if you fly the flag vertically, which a lot of people like to do, the wavy lines become a depiction of Whatcom Falls itself. So it's nice that it can take on multiple meanings as you rotate it or flip it or whatever you want to do. And the last piece is the 4 green stripes, which represent the 4 original towns of Bellingham. North to south, that's Whatcom, Seaholm, Bellingham, Fairhaven. They were all founded in about the 1850s. The first Whatcom and Seaholm merged to become New Whatcom, and then Bellingham and Fairhaven merged to become Fairhaven, and then those 2 big cities merged in 1904 to become Bellingham. And there was some controversy about what the name of this new city would be, but they realized what they all had in common was Bellingham Bay. The western edge of each original town touched Bellingham Bay, so the bay in a sense kind of united them, and that's why they agreed upon the final name Bellingham. And you can kind of see that in the flag. I like to say that it's a great flag or a crappy map, because it's almost like an aerial view of where those original towns were in relation to the bay.
One thing I love about art, whether it's a poem or a painting or a design generated from a computer program, is that the beholder can interpret it in different ways. I mean, we apply our meaning of our own life to the piece of art. And I'm wondering if you find that people interpret it in different ways. And then also, does it stand the test of time? Because when people interpret it in different ways, that sometimes people say is what makes it timeless.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. I think the abstract nature of the flag allows it to be interpreted different ways. One such example, someone emailed me recently who said, I know the meaning of these wavy lines that you say, but for me, I like to think of them also representing the 3 creeks that run into Bellingham Bay in the city limits of Bellingham. So I was just like, that's awesome. Like, keep thinking that. Like, if this symbol is to be adopted, like I said, it's a personal thing. Having the word Bellingham on it is personal. It has to mean what you want it to mean. It can mean what I said it meant, but it also can mean how you want to interpret it. And I think what helps is that it is just abstract, geometric. If it were very literal, if it were a painting of an orca whale, or if it were, a detailed illustration of Mount Baker, you would see it and you would know exactly what it was. But the air of mystery and the thing that makes you dig a little deeper into it makes people automatically invested in it. I mean, even just having to Google search, what does this Bellingham flag means? You're already engaging with it and you're already interested. As far as standing the test of time, I would love for that to happen, but I'm also, a logo designer, and I know that eventually things are rebranded. So if, eventually if a different flag came along, I wouldn't be upset. Like, for me, we needed a visual identity now, and like this was the one that was working. So I don't know if it'll be timeless. I hope it exists for a long time and it serves its purpose, but I'm not opposed to improving our identity in any way.
That indicates to me that you're very freeing about not being in control of it.
Yeah.
And in fact, you've donated it to the public domain. Tell us what that means exactly.
Donating things to the public domain basically just means that anyone can reproduce it and use it in any way they want, even for profit. They can create their own shirts or their own mugs or whatever they want to do. And, as an entrepreneur, a lot of people have told me, why would you do that? That's stupid. But I'm not an entrepreneur. Like, I'm just a visual artist that's trying to fix and mend and improve as much things as I can before I get hit by lightning or something. So I'm just trying to use my skills and give them to people. So for this flag, it meant giving it away, which is fine. One thing, though, that I've kind of taken on unofficially is sort of the art director of the flag. So you can't easily access a print file of the flag yet. So a lot of people will email me and say, hey, I have this event coming up. Like yesterday, somebody emailed me for Hoptoberfest, or a beer festival for Bellingham, and they said, hey, I want to put this flag on our logo. And I was like, cool, you can totally do that. And they're like, and here's what it looks like. And I'm like, maybe change the size a little bit, or like maybe the colors maybe might not work that great. Like, I'm not a like super hardcore, cracking down on people's design. I want them to do what they want, but I also want to help. So as far as I can do that, I will. Yeah.
So it's all around town. It's even at the Bellingham International Airport, and it's been there for a while. It's on the Lunky Monkey, and then it's also on the Bridge Church.
Yeah, which I just saw
You've seen that?
yesterday or the day before.
And that's an example of people adapting it. So in Roman Mars Talk, did he talk about how people adopt it, but also adapt it?
Yeah, I think he said the sign of a successful flag is people adapting it before it becomes official. And that is a big part. Milwaukee, they have a flag process going on right now that's still unofficial, very similar to the Bellingham one in that it was created by a nonprofit arts organization, is now just being promoted. But there's people making, bicycles and hats and shirts and badges, and it just shows the natural personal investment that people have in it. I think it helps that we haven't really had a visual identity for Bellingham. I mean, realistically, this is just coming in and it's representing Bellingham to people. That's what they love about it. It's not the flag that they love. It's Bellingham that they love. And they finally have like the easiest way to say that, And so I think that's why so many people are doing it.
You mentioned Mount Baker a few minutes ago, and I'm wondering, why didn't you put it in the flag?
That's been the number one criticism that I've received from people.
I didn't mean for it to be criticism.
No,
I'm
it's
just wondering.
fine. It's a very valid question because we are so used to seeing renders of Mount Baker in so many things around us. There's a few reasons why I didn't include the Mount Baker or any of the nearby mountains in the flag. Particularly because this was supposed to represent Bellingham. It's not a flag for Whatcom County. It's a flag for quintessentially Bellingham things. And so Mount Baker is a little removed from Bellingham. But then when one would pose the argument, well, we have this beautiful view and it's why I moved here. It has all these fun things to offer. And you're absolutely right. But that's also why people move to Vancouver, Canada. It's also why people move to Ferndale or Burlington. Or it's, the relationship that we have with Mount Baker, many other cities have. Personally, I grew up in Deming, where Mount Baker was our high school our logo, and it was we were very connected to it, but it's not quintessentially ours. And the last reason would be that this flag has to fly in conjunction with many, many renders of Mount Baker already. And so if you have two illustrations of the same thing, but in different styles, they have a tendency to clash with each other. So instead, this flag actually complements things like the Bellingham City logo, the Whatcom County logo, the Bellingham Herald logo, the Western logo, the BTC logo, all these logos that we see that have these renders of Mount Baker. This can fly in conjunction with those and kind of fit together.
Sure, that makes perfect sense to me. I'm wondering how graphic art differs from other traditional visual arts, such as paintings or drawings or multimedia, in terms of how the graphic designer looks at his or her work, especially when it's done, how they consider it.
Right.
And then also, does the person consider themselves a traditional artist?
That's a great question. Actually, last night I was at a lecture at the Pickford from a very famous graphic designer named Art Chantry. And he's somewhat of a controversial designer, and he straight up said graphic design is not art. He said graphic design is language. He said if you're doing graphic design as art, you're doing it wrong. That's not my opinion, but that's one opinion of one pretty famous person. But I think that it's a very broad spectrum. You have people who are called interaction designers, and they go to school technically studying graphic design, but they end up just using theory and how people interact with websites and interact with printed media, whether or not they purchase something, whether or not they click on the next page. So that area of design is pretty much completely removed from the visual element of it. I mean, it's there, but they're only discussing the theory and they don't create those structures. Then all the way on the other end of the spectrum, you have just illustrators, people who do editorial illustrations for magazines, who are using illustration, drawing, and it's purely visual. There's no type, there's no theory. So it's a very broad spectrum as far as what is considered art and what is not considered art. It's interesting that you ask about, like, when it's done, how do you feel about it? I've had designs for people who commissioned me to do something like a poster and then said, oh, you should put your name on it, say designed by Brad Lockhart, sign it like you would a painting. And I'm just like, no, like, I made this for you, this is yours, you paid me to do it, I made it, but it's not mine, it's yours. So a lot of the times, as a designer, you're solving a problem for someone. You're creating something that communicates something to their audience, their customers, their family, whoever. And so it's a collaboration. It's not a personal piece. You're not expressing yourself. You rarely get to do fine art in the sense that it's your concept and your feelings. It's always, well, more or less, it's always commissioned, and it always has a purpose that was collaborative. So sometimes it's very hard to own designs because you might not even like them. I mean, I've done things that I'm not going to tell people that I did but you got to make money somehow, so that's fine. But I definitely have situations where someone will be like, will you please do a piece for this art show? And I'll say, yes, I'll use my graphic design style, but I'm going to do something personal. I'm going to tell a story about my family, or I'm going to redesign a movie poster of a movie I love, but the poster was garbage, and I'll finally get a chance to do right by this movie. So that's when I get to kind of express myself, and that's when other designers get to too. And sometimes that's when you do your best work.
Every year the city hosts the Martin Luther King Jr. event at City Hall. And it's a citywide event, but the city council office kind of shepherds it. And I'm thinking of hiring you. I think it would be great if we could incorporate Dr. King's image with the new flag design.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah,
Totally.
I'm excited about that. Let's see. Oh, I wanted to be sure that we talk about the June 14th flag raising that's going to happen, because that's Flag Day.
Yep.
And when Councilmember Vargas brought forward the motion to have a resolution written, she mentioned she wanted it raised on Flag Day, which makes complete sense.
Totally.
So it's going to be at noon in the plaza in front of City Hall. And then also I wanted to put a plug in to invite people to come to the City Council and Hearing Examiner open house right after that. Cool. And we have new offices. So it's a great chance to invite people in and see where our new offices are. But I'm super excited about that. And I know a lot of people in the city, they're very excited too. So
Yeah.
you'll be there. You'll be helping raise it.
I will be there. I don't know if I'll raise it. I think this is more of a city thing. Like, I feel like I've gotten enough flag glory at this point. I would love to hand it off to them, and I want them to be able to capitalize on the phenomena or whatever you have around it, Like, I want this to improve their image, and I want it to help connect them to people, and that's the whole purpose of this.
Wonderful. Let's see. There's another art form that's been a really important part of your life, and that's music. And it's kind of interesting what I've learned about your genre of music. Talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, so I started playing music when I was 13, so that would have been in 1998. I started playing electric guitar in Whatcom County. I met some friends in Bellingham, and we started a band around the age 15. It was cool. I went to Mount Baker, and the other band members went to Seaholm and Squalicum, so we kind of had this like young high school group. We could go play one lunch and play one dance, and that's kind of how I got started in music at a very young age, writing and recording music. By my late teens, I started a band with 4 other friends called Black Eyes and Neckties, and that was sort of the central focus of my life from 2002 to 2009. I wouldn't say I was a professional musician because I barely made any money. I was an unprofessional musician, I suppose, in that sense, but it was like the thing that I dedicated my most time to. I would work crappy jobs so that I could leave for 6 weeks at a time and go on tour. And that was, an incredible experience, and I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. Made tons of friends, And it's actually how I got into graphic design. Ironically enough, I started designing posters for shows, when I was a teenager. And then by the time I was in my early 20s, I was doing logos and album art for other bands. And then mid-20s, I was getting hired by venues to do all their posters. And then when the music slowed down for me, it was just kind of a very easy step to just be like, well, here's the thing that I've actually been supporting myself with. And I can go back to school. I went to Western and got a degree, and that's how I became a professional graphic designer. So I owe a lot to music. I owe, most of my friends and my career. So it's a huge part of my identity. For the longest time, it was the center of my life, and now it's just something that enriches my life. I still do it. I play acoustic folk music in a band called Baltic Cousins, and we're performing tomorrow night at the downtown, at the Commercial Street Night Market, although this will air later. So
that's okay.
we performed in the past, but it's me and my partner Nika, and we just love to play music at our house too all the time. She's a violin teacher. And I also play in a very loud, extremely heavy metal band called Dryland. So my music has kind of just polarized into the quietest music I've ever played and the loudest music I've ever played. So it's pretty satisfying at the moment.
Is the loudest music you've ever played the horror band you were telling me about?
Oh,
or is
sorry.
that different?
That was Black Eyes and Neckties, and that
Okay.
band was definitely loud and fast, but not as loud. But yeah, that was I would describe that music as kind of garage rock, punk, just kind of fun, wacky, fast, crazy, organ-driven rock and roll. And now we're playing this more mid-tempo, what is described actually as stoner rock, which is a genre of heavy metal that's very mid-tempo, chuggy, repetitive, but has just these brilliant breaks of kind of melodic shredding.
Nice.
I can't describe it any other way.
That's a very cool description. Yeah, because when we first talked, I was like, horror band. I mean, I had never heard of that, so that's very interesting. One thing you do around town is you do lecturing. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's something I sort of fell into around a year and a half ago. I actually also have a lecture tomorrow, which will be in the past from when this airs. Up at Western, I'll be on a panel of designers. This week is called Design Days, and so they bring in a lot of designers to talk to kids and give them inspiration and tell their stories. And that's kind of, in a sense, what I've been doing. About a year and a half ago, I gave my first lecture at the Pickford on animation. So animation is my full-time job right now. I do motion graphics, animation. And I did a big project, and it got a lot of attention, and I really wanted to just kind of pull back the curtain, invite people who were interested in that subject and be like, here's how I do it. It's not this big mystery. It's pretty easy, in my opinion, to do. And if you are creative and you're handy with a computer, you can do it too. And that's kind of my message. So since then, since the flag has happened, it's given me a lot more opportunities to speak. And I've spoke at middle schools and high schools, and I lectured at the Whatcom Museum and the Boys and Girls Club. And I basically just trying to go in, find young, creative people, and tell them, don't let anybody tell you that you can't make money doing this, because you totally can. Like 10, or I don't even know how many years ago, I was in high school now, 15 years ago, people would say, oh, it's cute, you're really good at art, but like you're gonna need to get a real job someday, And it's not that they discouraged me, but they didn't really encourage me either. So I'm just trying to kind of open people's minds to that if you want to do graphic art in any way, in any of the ways we discussed, illustration all the way to concepting, there is a ridiculous amount of work right now, and you can go to college or you could not go to college. Just find your way in the door and you can make it happen. I also like to show people my process. So with the flag, I use the flag as an example in my lectures and say, here's the 5 steps that I used to design this flag. And these are steps that you can use to design anything that you want. It's pretty universal,
I really appreciate the fact that you're using your flag success as a platform to go out and teach other people, especially young people. That's great. So as we come to a close, I just wanted to ask you about your favorite things in Bellingham. And we kind of get a glimpse of that from the flag. But let us know what your favorite things are to do in Bellingham.
My favorite things to do in Bellingham are probably play pinball, skateboard, go to rock shows, go to art shows. I'm a very indoor person, I suppose. It's funny because a lot of people say they love Bellingham because they love the outdoors, and I'm just not a very naturally outdoorsy person. So I think I'm more drawn to the culture of Bellingham and the art scene and the music scene that I've, been involved with since a young age. And that's what I, love the most about Bellingham, is being inspired by my peers, inspiring my peers, working together with, places like Makeshift to make great local, affordable, usable spaces for art and music, and that's what I care the most about. And I love Bellingham because it's so convenient. I mean, you can't argue. Like, when I lived in Seattle for a few years, and I felt like you're so disconnected from people. Your best friend might live there, but they're an hour and a 20-minute bus ride away. Like, here, everyone is so close by, and you don't even have to make plans to see people. You can just go somewhere and you know that you'll have a friend there. It's like Cheers or something, And so I love that just easy-going, like convenient, fun aspect of where we live. It's very relieving for me.
And that shows through your flag design. So thanks for joining me. It's been great talking with you, and thanks for everything you've contributed to our community.
Thank you for having me. Very happy.
Thanks for joining us for Bellingham Voices, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Great.
We talked for a while.